This week, a new book on transgenderism is making waves in the media, as is the firing of a Catholic school teacher who married her girlfriend. Meanwhile, the New York Times Sunday op-ed was titled, "Let's Ban Porn." I know, we're pleasantly surprised too. I'm Ryan Everson, and this is the Catholic Millennial Show. So as I briefly mentioned on the show last week, there's a new book on the market on transgenderism titled When Harry Became Sally, Responding to the Transgender Moment. The book is written by Ryan T. Anderson. Anderson is a Catholic who has written several books defending Catholic social teaching positions with secular arguments that you need not be Catholic or Christian to understand. Anderson is also the author of Truth Overruled, The Future of Marriage and Religious Freedom, and he is the co-author of Debating Religious Liberty and Discrimination. Check him out. You can find him on social media at Ryan T. And. So jumping back to his newest book, Anderson gives a very persuasive, factually backed, and non-religious argument for a lot of issues regarding the transgender movement. And I'll provide a couple examples of that, but first some foundation information to get us started. So clinical studies thus far have shown that 80 to 95% of children who experience gender identity disorder, also known as GID, grow out of it before adulthood. 80 to 95%. That's not all of them, but that's an overwhelming majority. So for this reason, Anderson demonstrates that taking steps towards helping children identify with their actual biological sex is much more helpful than so-called sex reassignment surgery, such as taking puberty blockers. These sex reassignment surgeries, as they're called, often cause more harm than good, especially when they're done with children. Because, as we said before, 80 to 95% of them are going to grow out of it, as the studies show. However, as of May 2017, 8 states have slapped the polarizing label of conversion therapy on such treatments that Ryan T. Anderson recommends and deemed that these therapies are unethical and also illegal, the more important one. So in 8 states, if your child has GID, it is illegal for you to seek treatment to help them identify with their biological sex. Illegal. And here's a spot where the transgenderism movement has extended far past the point of equality or adults using their free will, and it's now creating legislation to vilify and in fact criminalize people who disagree with even a small part of the transgender agenda. So let's unpack that just a little bit here. So first, it is not scientifically possible to change one's gender. You can surgically remove and replace genitalia and place different hormones into the body to make the body appear more like the other gender, but differences between men and women go all the way down to the molecular level, and you can't change those things. This is not my political or religious belief. You scientifically cannot change those things. So the fact that sex reassignment surgery is evident, the fact that the sex reassignment surgery doesn't fix everything is evident in the fact that approximately 41% of people who have sex reassignment surgery attempt suicide. Now, transgender people are far more likely to attempt suicide than the average person, which is around like 4% in America. And we need to recognize transgender people may experience hateful comments and discrimination that is in fact unfair and unjust from people around them, and we need to strongly oppose such actions. However, this markedly higher suicide rate remains the same even when these environmental factors are controlled for. So, it demonstrates that the transgender sex reassignment therapy doesn't actually fix the core issue. There's something else going on that we need to do more research for to actually address these issues. So that all being said, it's one thing for an adult to say, I feel like I'm the other sex, I'm going to pursue measures to look like the opposite gender. It's a completely different thing for a 5-year-old child to have the authority to make that decision. And it's even more ridiculous for the government to criminalize therapy that helps that child identify with their actual biological sex. Now, if we have, say, an adult who decides to go all in with sex reassignment surgery, do I sympathize with this person because they're in a very challenging situation? Absolutely. Because it must be incredibly challenging, beyond my own comprehension, to know what they're going through and how hard that is. Do these people need to be treated with love and compassion as Christ treated even the greatest outcasts in society with love and compassion? Absolutely. Does that mean everyone has to support their decision to have sex reassignment surgery? No, it doesn't. That being said, even though I am morally opposed to sex reassignment surgery, and even though the science is beginning to show that such surgeries do not address the core issue, I'm not trying to criminalize it. I don't think the government should be able to tell an adult that they aren't allowed to get this medical procedure from a consenting doctor if they really, really want to. There's a difference between opposing things morally and legislatively. I oppose transgenderism and sex reassignment surgeries morally, but I also think adults should have the legal right to do what they want to do regarding the matter. People who support sex reassignment procedures have every legal right to support them. I want to be clear about that. However, people who do not support them are due those exact same legal rights. And that means that if I have a kid with GID and I want them to receive therapy to help them identify with their biological sex, I am due the legal right to find a doctor who can provide that treatment. And in 8 states, people have been stripped of that legal right, and they may have to go across state lines just to find a doctor who can legally give them that treatment that they're looking for. Relatedly, some politicians and activists have decided that parents should lose custody of their children if they refuse to help their child transition to the opposite sex. Again, despite the fact that 80 to 95% of children identify with their actual biological sex after the end of childhood, that they come to realize that they are actually the same as their biological sex and they get over their GID naturally. This is really, this is something that Anderson mentioned in the book. It's been happening a little bit, in past years and decades, but it's starting to really turn up now that with the transgenderism movement, everything is getting going now. LifeSite News actually had a story covering an incident of it earlier this week in Ohio. Literally just happened. So this is, gradually happening more and more, becoming more and more of a real issue where parents are literally losing custody of their children just because they don't want to put them on puberty blockers. The World Professional Organization of Transgender Health, also known as WPATH, says that seeking therapy to address GID by helping the child to identify with their biological sex is unethical and unsuccessful. However, after looking at this more closely, Anderson points out that they only cite 2 studies for this claim, and both of them are from the 1960s. And this is because evidence from more modern studies do not play in their favor. They do not play in WPATH's favor, in the transgender movement's favor. And Anderson goes into that with more details in the book. This is another point of evidence indicating that transgender ideology is being advanced by politics, not by science. In no other scientific field would people cite studies in the 60s without acknowledging modern studies. And in no other medical treatment do we take a 5-year-old's opinion at face value. That's very important to recognize. My last point about this book is to address Anderson's critics. Many in the media have gone after Anderson for being any number of terrible things just for writing this book. So I'd like to say this. Anyone who calls Anderson hateful or unfair or transphobic or anything of the like has clearly not read the book. This is exactly what the Washington Post did. It was obvious that WAPO didn't actually read the book, not only because the critique was totally out of line, but because they cited page numbers that don't even exist. WAPO later edited their article online, but by that point a ton of people were already livid because WAPO had falsely portrayed an honest and objective scientific book as hateful propaganda, which it certainly is not in the slightest. Anderson is more than fair to people on the other side. He quotes numerous people who do or used to identify as transgender throughout the book, and he has hundreds of citations to back up everything he says. So I highly recommend the book. Again, it's called When Harry Became Sally by Ryan T. Anderson. Moving on, the New York Times Sunday Review op-ed last week was titled, "Let's Ban Porn." So just in this first half of the month of February, NYT has gone after abortion and pornography. Cultural plate tectonics are shifting for sure, and people are starting to wake up to these issues, which is really great. So in the op-ed, columnist Ross Douthat makes some interesting points tying pornography into the Me Too movement. He says that the Me Too movement should try to address pornography as an issue, which is correct. And he also says the Me Too movement has not realized that they want to address pornography, which is also very true. And if you look at the Golden Globes and 50 Shades and the new Sports Illustrated Swim issue being promoted as female empowerment, you have your evidence of that. He goes on to say, quote, "If you want better men by any standard, there is every reason to regard ubiquitous pornography as an obstacle, and to suspect that between virtual reality and creepy forms of customization, its influence is only likely to get worse," close quote. Douthat goes even further, not just calling for education on porn, but for legislative action against it. He articulates this point saying, quote, "Porn is also just a product, and therefore subject to regulation and restriction if we so desire. The belief that it should not be restricted is a mistake. The belief that it cannot be censored is a superstition. Law and jurisprudence changed once and can change again," close quote. Again, the fact that this is coming from the New York Times of all places is a sign that pornography is becoming less of a partisan issue and it's getting more recognition as an evil that must be fought by everybody. So that's really great. And one more piece of big news for this week. A Catholic school teacher in Miami named Joycelyn Morphy was fired after getting married to another female. Now, this is a very challenging situation. Nobody on either side wants things like this to happen. It's a very sensitive, uncomfortable situation for everybody involved. That being said, the Catholic school did the right thing, and they were completely within their legal rights to do what they did, and here's why. First, contrary to what many in the mainstream media were implying this week, Morphy was not fired because she was a lesbian. She was fired specifically because of her marriage to another woman and because that was a violation of her contract with the school. The school did not fire her because she had same-sex attraction. The school did not fire her when she was dating this other woman. The school did not even fire her when she was engaged to this other woman. They fired her the day after the wedding. If that doesn't make it explicitly clear that the wedding itself was the deciding factor, I'm not sure what does. The church had every legal right to do this. Why? Because private institutions have the right to hire and fire people such that the mission and values of their employees further the mission and values of the institution. This is about ideology, not identity. This is not about the teacher's same-sex attractions, which she did not choose to experience. It's about what she believes about marriage and how she voluntarily acted on those beliefs and how that contradicted the teaching of the church. Again, not identity, ideology. That's what's important. There's no news of any lawsuit right now, but undoubtedly at some point a situation like this is going to get to the Supreme Court, and some people are going to try to challenge the current law. One more small piece of news. A Lutheran minister in New Jersey this week who identifies as transgender had a renaming ceremony at her church where she gave herself the new name of Peter. I really think this just serves as an interesting point to note how more and more Protestant denominations are accepting completely unorthodox positions, and how the more this happens, the more it becomes obvious that the faith and morals of the Catholic Church are infallibly guided by the Holy Spirit as we believe. Martin Luther had 100 theses for the Catholic Church back in 1517, but I think he would have many more for the modern-day Lutheran Church.
Hey there everyone, thanks for watching this episode of the Catholic Millennial Show. All of our current and future projects here at the Catholic Millennial are dependent upon your support. If you'd like to help us and receive some killer Catholic swag, we'd be incredibly thankful if you could join us on Patreon by clicking the link in the title description or by going to catholicmillennialblog.com/Patreon. But maybe you're a young adult trying to get your life together and disposable income is kind of tight. Or maybe you're a seminarian or religious sister and disposable income is kind of non-existent. That's totally cool. If you could please follow us on social media and share our content with your friends, that would also be incredibly helpful and we'd really, really appreciate it. Thanks again, and we will see you back here next week for the Catholic Millennial Show. God bless.